Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. The cruel thing my wife did was look me in the eye at breakfast, smile like nothing was wrong, and say, "Sleep in the guest room. Your snoring is ruining my life," while she had already planned to lock our bedroom door every night so she could give her real attention to someone else. Here's what happened. 6 months ago, my wife, Nadine Hart, told me to move into the guest room because my snoring was unlivable. We had been married 9 years, living in a brick ranch near Southfield, Michigan, where porch lights blink on at dusk and the mailman knows every dog. She said it was temporary, just until her sleep settled. That night at 9:47, I heard the master deadbolt click from inside. The sound landed in my chest like a small insult. I asked about it the next morning. She smiled, said she felt safer that way, and kept stirring her coffee. My name is Malcolm Hart. I am 41 and raised between Detroit bus rides and my grandmother's pew at New Hope Missionary Baptist. I work as a procurement analyst, which means I notice patterns for a living and pretend it is not personal. I check receipts, compare dates, and read fine print twice. When I am anxious, I chew ice until my teeth ache, a habit my mother used to scold. Nadine used to say my quiet steadied her. When she asked for separate rooms, I blame myself. I picture my mouth open, breathing loud, ruining her nights. If you ever felt your own home turn cold overnight, comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Because I need to know I'm not the only one who's lived through a quiet betrayal. And stay with me. The deadbolt wasn't the strangest part. The guest room sat over the garage, cold in the rest of the house, with a window that rattled when the wind pushed through the maples. I carried up a pillow, toiletries, and a Navy alarm clock Nadine once teased me for loving. The first nights felt wrong, like sleeping in a borrowed life. At breakfast, she acted normal, but her attention drifted to her phone. She developed a small quirk, too, tapping her thumbnail against her front tooth whenever I asked a direct question. That tap became my nightly soundtrack, louder than the heater and harsher than any argument. Nadine said her insomnia was getting worse because of work. She was 38, a brand coordinator downtown, and she spoke about deadlines the way people speak about storms. She claimed she lay awake for hours, listening to me snore and watching the clock crawl. I felt guilty, even embarrassed, and offered to see a doctor about sleep apnea. Nadine waved it off, saying medical appointments would create drama and paperwork. She wanted a simple fix, she said, just until her sleep reset. I agreed, telling myself sacrifice was love, and love would bring us back. I did not argue once, but the deadbolt kept clicking every night, always before 10. Some nights it was 9:58, other nights 9:44, but it was never forgotten. It was deliberate. I started listening the way I listened for our furnace turning on in winter, counting seconds, predicting the sound. When I asked again, Nadine changed her reason. She said she might be sleepwalking and did not want to wander downstairs. Another morning, she said she had read about home invasions and wanted control of her space. Her explanation sounded reasonable, but the way they rotated made my stomach tighten. By the third month, our house felt split by a hallway. In daylight, we shared a kitchen and small talk. At night, we lived like strangers, separated by a locked door. Our intimacy faded into polite touches. A hand on a shoulder, a quick kiss that ended before it started. I kept shaving carefully, keeping my hairline sharp, as if looking put together might earn my marriage back. On Saturdays, I still visited my barber near 8 Mile, and even the clippers buzz sounded like a question I could not answer. Then the sounds began. At first it was faint, like a TV murmuring through a wall, easy to dismiss as the house settled. But one Tuesday, as sleet tapped the guest room window, I heard Nadine laugh, a soft, private laugh I had not heard in months. It was not the laugh she used with co-workers. It was a laugh she used with me when we were dating, and the future still felt generous. Another night I heard her say, "No, stop," in a playful voice, followed by a pause that made my skin go tight. I tried to confront it gently. One morning over grits and eggs, I mentioned the noise and asked if she was watching shows without headphones. Nadine blinked slowly, like I had interrupted something important, then told me I was imagining things. She said houses carried sound. When I pressed, she sighed and said she used comedy clips to relax. She promised headphones. That night the deadbolt clicked, and the sounds returned anyway, softer but present, like someone trying to keep a secret from a man who lived 5 steps away. My shame had a specific trigger, being treated like I was irrational. My father used to say, if you let someone rewrite reality, you will spend your life apologizing for your eyes. Still, I apologized. I told Nadine I was stressed, that my mind was running. She patted my hand with distant kindness and returned to scrolling. I started taking longer drives after work, circling the strip malls near Greenfield Road, letting neon from takeout spots blur. I would sit in parking lots, engine off, listen to buses' side stops, pretending the night air could settle my thoughts. Around that time, Nadine began going on client trips. She came home with tote bags, name badges, and a practice excitement that sounded rehearsed. She always brought me something small, a snack from an airport kiosk, like a peace offering. She also started, keeping her phone face down and flinch when it buzzed. I told myself I was becoming the kind of man who policed his wife, and I hated that. Some nights I whispered prayers without moving my lips, not for proof, but for peace. I kept my face calm, even when it hurt. Last week, a Tuesday in early October, the air smelled like wet leaves, and the sky hung low over the neighborhood. I watched Nadine fold laundry in silence, her mouth pressed in, her fingers working fast. My chest felt crowded. I realized I could not keep living with questions. I needed the truth, whatever it was, because uncertainty was making me smaller. I told Nadine I had to stay late at the office on Thursday for an audit. I kept my voice casual. She lifted her eyes for half a second, and relief flashed across her face before she masked it. Thursday came. I left the house at 7:30 a.m. like normal, wearing my usual navy tie, the one Nadine once said made me look dependable. At work, I stared at spreadsheets and barely absorbed the numbers. By lunch, I had chewed through a pen cap without noticing. My co-workers joked about weekend plans, and I laughed too, but my thoughts were elsewhere, rehearsing the steps of what I was about to do. I did not want to catch my wife. I wanted my marriage to be innocent, yet my body moved as if innocence had already left. At 5:10 p.m., I drove home and pulled into our driveway long enough for Nadine to see my car through the front window. Then I backed out, turned the corner, and parked near hedges by the community playground. Children's screams carried on the wind. I waited 20 minutes, counting breaths, then walked back along the side of our house, using the back door near the laundry room. I slipped inside quietly and removed my shoes. The hardwood felt cold under my socks. Upstairs, I heard water running in a soft hum, like she was preparing for company. The master bedroom was unlocked because it was still early. I entered careful, and the familiar scent of Nadine's lotion hit me. Cocoa butter and something floral. For a moment, memories tried to soften me. Her hair on my pillow, her humming while she got ready for church, her hand finding mine at funerals. I pushed the closet door open and stepped into the walk-in space behind her dresses and winter coats. I crouched behind hanging fabric and a stack of shoe boxes, leaving a narrow crack to see the room. My knees already ached, but I stayed. Waiting in darkness does strange things to time. Every minute felt like an hour, and every tiny sound sounded like a threat. I shifted slowly, careful not to bump the shoe rack. I heard Nadine move around, open drawers, close them, hum a melody under her breath. She never used to hum at night. She used to talk to me. Her humming stopped when her phone buzzed, and I heard her inhale sharply. She murmured, "Soon," like a promise, then resumed getting ready. I stared at the carpet fibers and tried to keep my breathing quiet, like quiet could protect me from what I already suspected. At 7:12, Nadine came into the bedroom wrapped in a towel, her hair damp and shining. She moved with quiet purpose, not rushed, not tired. She applied lotion in smooth strokes, then stood in front of the mirror and practiced smiling. Not a tired smile, but a bright one, the kind she used when she wanted to be chosen. I felt a hot wave of embarrassment, as if I were intruding on something I had forfeited. She slipped into pajamas, then sat at the edge of the bed and checked her phone. Her thumbnail tapped her tooth. Tap, tap, tap. At 9:30, Nadine climbed into bed with her laptop. The glow lit her face, and I could see her eyes flick between the screen and the clock. She looked restless in a way that was not insomnia. She was waiting. I tried to breathe slowly, like my therapist taught me after my mother died, but my lungs kept tightening. I thought about walking out, confronting her, giving her a chance to confess. Then I pictured her twisting it, calling me paranoid, making me apologize again. I stayed still, folded into the closet, telling myself I needed facts, not arguments. My ring felt heavy on my finger. At 9:59, Nadine stood up, walked to the bedroom door, and closed it firmly. A second later, the deadbolt clicked into place. The sound was final, a punctuation mark at the end of my denial. She returned to the bed and adjusted her laptop. Then she smiled and whispered, "Okay, he thinks I'm alone. Come on." My stomach dropped. A man's voice replied from the speakers, "About time, baby. I've been waiting." Nadine laughed softly, the laugh I used to earn with a joke at breakfast. She said his name, Damon, like it was a secret she treasured. The man on the laptop sounded relaxed, confident, familiar with her. Nadine shifted her voice into a flirtatious cadence I had not heard in months. She asked about his day. He said he'd been counting hours until she got home. They spoke like a couple with routines, inside jokes, and patience for each other's pauses. Nadine tucked hair behind her ear, leaning closer to the camera. My throat tightened with a strange mix of anger and humiliation. I felt small in that closet, not because I was weak, but because I had been invited into my own marriage as an outsider. Nadine reached for a satin pouch on the nightstand and pulled out black lace lingerie I had never seen. We shared a laundry basket, so secrecy required effort. She changed quickly, then leaned back, letting the camera take her in. Damon exhaled and told her she looked perfect. Nadine giggled, the same sound she used to give me at the end of a date. I remembered us splitting fries at a diner off Woodward, dreaming about a house we could afford. Hearing that giggle aimed at him made my throat tighten, like my history was being reassigned in real time. Their talk turned intimate, and I understood enough to know it was not harmless flirting. Nadine's breathing changed, her voice softened, and Damon spoke to her with possessive affection. I stared at the closet wall and fought the urge to burst out and end it with noise. My mind tried to excuse her, searching for reasons I could forgive. Stress, loneliness, a mistake. Then I heard her say, "I have all night. He's in the other room, like always." The casual cruelty of that sentence made my hands tremble. I realized the guest room was not a compromise. It was part of her plan. After a while, their voices shifted into planning. Nadine mentioned timing and paperwork. Damon asked what her attorney had advised. My breath caught. She said she had been meeting with a lawyer in Atlanta, where she claimed her company had connections. She described separate bedrooms as evidence that we were already living apart. She laughed like it was clever. Damon laughed too, like this was a project. Nadine said she could frame my long work hours as abandonment. She spoke calmly, like a woman reading from a script. I felt my stomach twist, not only from betrayal, but from how organized it sounded. Nadine told Damon she wanted the house. She said she deserved it after carrying the emotional labor, a phrase she never used with me but now wielded like a hammer. She talked about alimony, retirement accounts, and the life she planned after she filed. "I have to play nice a little longer," she said. "Let him think it's snoring and insomnia. Let him keep paying." Her voice was steady, almost professional. I pictured her tapping her tooth while she said it, rehearsing. Shame crawled through me because I had been trying to be patient while she was building a case like a report. Damon asked about their trips. Nadine mentioned the weekend. She said she was visiting a client in Chicago. She had been with him instead, in a hotel near the water, watching boats and pretending her marriage did not exist. Another trip she called a training in Phoenix had been the same lie. She described how she kept receipts to make her story believable. I listened and felt the floor of my mind shift. I had driven her to the airport, kissed her cheek, and told her I was proud. I had been funding the weekend she laughed about. The betrayal was not impulsive. It was maintained. Something in me hardened into focus. Nadine was building a file. I needed one too. My phone was in my pocket. My fingers shook as I pulled it out and opened the recorder. I held it near the crack in the closet door, without touching the hangers. The audio captured Nadine's voice clearly and Damon's voice through the speakers. I recorded the admissions about Atlanta, the plan to claim abandonment, the hidden transfers, the travel lies, the intention to take the house. Every word felt like swallowing glass, but I kept recording. I was not doing it to punish her. I was doing it so reality could not be rewritten. The hours dragged. My legs went numb. My shoulders stiffened. I could smell cedar from the closet shelf and detergent from Nadine's sweaters. Meanwhile, Nadine sounded energized, alive. She talked about neighborhoods in California where Damon lived, places with palm-lined streets and late-night coffee shops. She said she wanted a condo near a shopping plaza, somewhere she could walk to yoga and never see my face again. Damon said he had already looked at listings. They compared commutes and joked about how simple it would be after the divorce. I felt my heart thud, not from jealousy alone, but from the shock of being erased from my own life like a clerical error. Around midnight, Nadine's laptop chimed with a message. She read it aloud and laughed, saying, "My husband is so predictable." Those words cut deep in the affair. Being cheated on was pain. Being mocked for my kindness was humiliation. I thought about my mother's funeral, when Nadine held my arm and told people I was strong. I wondered how long she had been practicing a version of me she could discard. I wanted to blame myself for missing signs, for trusting too easily, for thinking loyalty was protection. But I also knew trust was not a flaw. Her contempt was. I kept recording, jaw clenched, refusing to become her fiction. At 1:08 a.m., Nadine and Damon began saying goodnight. They exchanged affectionate promises about tomorrow night and a future that did not include me. Nadine clicked the call off, and the laptop screen went dark. She sat smiling for a moment, satisfied, then went into the bathroom. Water ran. She returned and changed into plain pajamas, like she was stepping back into the role of wife. She crawled under the covers and turned off the lamp. The room went dim, lit only by streetlight leaking through blinds. I stayed frozen, listening to her breathing slow and deepening. My hands cramped around my phone. I kept counting minutes, waiting for sleep to settle over her like a lid. When I was sure she was asleep, I eased the closet door open and stepped out, moving like I was walking across thin ice. The floor creaked faintly. Nadine did not stir. I crossed the room and reached the deadbolt. I turned it carefully. The clicks sounded loud in my ears, but the house stayed quiet. I opened the door and slipped into the hallway, then closed it behind me. I did not go to the guest room. I went downstairs, grabbed a duffel bag, my laptop, and the small metal box where we kept passports and spare keys. My hands moved on instinct, quick and controlled, like I was evacuating before a storm. In the hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and backed up the recording. I saved copies to a hard drive and to the cloud. I emailed one file to an account Nadine did not know existed. I did not sleep. The heater clicked on and off. Somewhere down the hall, a child cried, and the sound pulled me back to childhood when I hid during my parents' fights. I realized I was hiding again, except now I was hiding from my own marriage. Anger rose, then grief, then a hollow calm. I stared at the ceiling and thought, I did everything right. That thought hurt the most. Friday morning, I called a divorce attorney recommended by a co-worker who survived a messy separation. His office sat off Telegraph Road, near auto shops and a corner store that sold hot coffee and scratch-off tickets. I arrived early, wearing the same navy tie, because routine was the only thing holding me together. In the waiting room, a television muttered news I did not absorb. The attorney, Mr. Carlisle, listened without interrupting, then played portions of the audio. His expression tightened. "This is strong," he said, "and it shows intent." He told me to stop all casual communication, preserve every file, and act like the court was already watching. I nodded and followed his instructions. On the drive back to the hotel, I passed a church with its doors propped open for rehearsal. A choir drifted into the street, layered over engines and distant horns. The sound should have comforted me, but it cracked my composure instead. I pulled into a parking lot near a corner store and sat with my forehead on the steering wheel, breathing carefully. I kept thinking about how Nadine used to sing along the gospel in the kitchen, off-key and fearless. Now her voice lived in a recording file on my phone, promising another man my home and my money. We filed that afternoon. Mr. Carlyle drafted papers citing adultery and financial deception. He prepared motions to freeze joint accounts and compel disclosure of any separate accounts. He told me not to confront Nadine alone. He told me to communicate through counsel. I nodded, grateful for clear rules. Back at the hotel, I ate a microwave dinner that tasted like cardboard. My phone lit up with texts from Nadine asking where I was. I did not answer. I felt a brief urge to explain, to ask why, to beg her to stop. Then I remembered her laugh and the word predictable. I turned the phone face down and stared at the wall until the urge passed. Saturday morning, a courier delivered the papers to our house. I was not there. I was still in the hotel, drinking bitter coffee and watching my phone light up. Nadine called, then called again, then kept calling. When I did not answer, she left voicemails that moved through emotions like weather. First, she demanded to know where I was. Then she denied everything, calling it misunderstanding. Then she accused me of being invasive, saying I violated her privacy. Finally, her voice turned pleading, soft, almost familiar, asking me to talk and work it out. I deleted the messages without finishing them. My chest hurt, but my decision did not move. Within days, Nadine's attorney claimed the recordings were unlawfully obtained. Mr. Carlyle stayed calm. He explained I was in my own home, in a marital closet, and she had no reasonable expectation of privacy, while speaking loudly in our shared bedroom and describing financial manipulation. He also pointed out her admissions about hidden transfers and litigation strategy. The filings moved quickly. The judge issued temporary orders freezing joint accounts and requiring disclosures. Nadine's tone changed after that. Her calls stopped. Her texts became careful. In my head, I kept hearing the deadbolt, but now it sounded less like power and more like a mistake she could not undo. During the proceedings, I moved into a small apartment near Ferndale, close enough to hear weekend traffic and sirens. I took the bus sometimes, just to sit among strangers and feel unclaimed by anyone's story. I ate breakfast at a diner where plates clattered and the cook greeted everyone like family. I told no one the full truth, not even my barber, because I could not stand pity. At night, I caught myself checking the clock at 9:45, waiting for a deadbolt I no longer lived under. Freedom can feel unfamiliar before it feels good. I practiced that new feeling. The divorce process stretched across 4 months, from October into February, when Michigan air turns brittle and salt dust clings to car doors. Nadine tried to paint me as controlling, accusing me of monitoring her. Mr. Carlyle produced the audio, and the tone in the room changed. Nadine's jaw tightened when her own words played back. Damon's voice came through the speaker, calling her baby, talking about plans. Nadine stared at the table, tapping her thumbnail against her tooth, the same tell. I watched that habit and felt something detach inside me. A woman can cry in court, but recordings do not cry. They repeat. The judge listened without rushing, and Nadine's story kept cracking. Nadine's case weakened further when bank records surfaced. The small transfers she thought were invisible looked obvious in print. The judge ordered disclosures and questioned the timing. Nadine's attorney pushed for settlement. Nadine still wanted the house, but her deception sat heavy in every discussion. I heard the phrase bad faith more than once. Mr. Carlyle negotiated hard. In the end, Nadine received her personal belongings and a portion of remaining marital funds after fees, with no alimony. When the decision was read, Nadine's face went blank for a second, then tight. She looked at me like I had taken something from her, not like she had tried to take everything from me. I did not speak. My silence felt clean. The day the final order was signed, snow flurries drifted past the courthouse steps. I walked out alone, breathing cold air that tasted sharp. I sat in my car for a long time with my hands on the steering wheel, listening to the heater hum. I expected triumph, but what I felt was quiet. Relief, yes, and also mourning, like I was burying someone who had been alive in my memories but dead in reality. I thought about the locked door, the giggle, the practiced smile. I wondered how many nights I apologized for hearing things. Then I remembered the file on my laptop and the judge's calm voice, and I let the quiet stay. Now I keep my life private. I will not post about it. I do not announce lessons. I wake up early, make oatmeal, and take walks when the sun is still low and the sidewalks are empty. On Sundays, I sit in the back row at church and let the organ fill the parts of me that words cannot reach. Sometimes I hear a deadbolt click in a movie and my stomach tightens, but then it passes. I am learning to let sounds be just sounds again. I am learning to enjoy ordinary things without scanning for traps. My success is small and steady. Paid bills, quiet sleep, and a mind that no longer begs for clarity. When Nadine and I first married, we rented a duplex near Old Redford and spent Friday nights sharing one plate of catfish from a corner place that smelled of pepper and frying oil. She used to braid her hair at the kitchen table and asked me to read her drafts for work. I was never loud with affection, but I was consistent, the kind of man who fixed loose cabinet hinges before anyone complained. Nadine said she loved that steadiness. Looking back, I wonder if she confused steadiness with control and control with safety. I gave her a calm life and assumed calm meant loyalty. I was wrong. Under the ceiling fan and the distant traffic hiss. I also had my flaws. I avoided hard conversations, believing peace was the same thing as love. When Nadine went quiet, I filled the silence with errands, sweeping the porch, washing the car, reorganizing the pantry by expiration dates. I told myself I was being helpful, but I was also hiding from discomfort. The first time she joked about my snoring in front of friends, I laughed too, even though it stung. I hated appearing needy. That pride became a blindfold. By the time she asked me to move out of our room, my instinct was to comply and prove I was easy to live with. I did not realize compliance can look like permission to someone without respect, while the porch light flickered over wet pavement. After I moved upstairs, Nadine developed an evening routine that felt staged. She would light a candle in the master bedroom, the kind with a wooden wick that crackled like a tiny fireplace. She said the sound calmed her. The crackle reached my guest room and made me think of secrets being burned. She also started playing soft rain sounds on a speaker in the hallway, claiming it helped her sleep. I tried to match her rituals with my own: chamomile tea, a podcast, counting breaths. But my mind kept circling the deadbolt. I could handle distance. I could not handle being locked out of the truth. As the refrigerator hummed and my stomach sank. One Saturday, I rode the bus downtown for no reason, just to sit among people who did not know me. Outside a grocery on Grand River, a man argued with a cashier about change, and the tension felt familiar. I realized I was living with constant low-grade alarm, the kind that makes ordinary noises feel like warnings. At a small diner near Midtown, I watched couples share pancakes and trade bites. I felt envy, then guilt for envying strangers. I kept hearing my father's voice: "Do not beg for basic respect." Still, I went home and said nothing, because my denial was easier than confrontation, with my jaw tight and my thoughts racing silently. In late September, a neighbor's dog barked every night around 10, and its yelps became a countdown to Nadine's lock. Sometimes I heard her heels on the bedroom floor, sharp taps, like she was walking with purpose instead of preparing for sleep. Other times, I heard a drawer open and close, then the faint rustle of fabric. My stomach would not, and I would tell myself it was laundry. Denial can be polite. It says, "Do not ruin the evening." I kept my doubts small and folded, the way I folded towels, try and make the mess look orderly. But my body did not believe my excuses. It reacted before my mind caught up, tightening at every sound. and I hated how small that made me feel inside. The week before I hid in the closet, Nadine came home with a bouquet of grocery store roses. She set them on the counter and said the house needed color. Her tone was bright, but her eyes stayed elsewhere. That night she asked what I wanted for dinner, like a waitress taking an order. I felt hope flicker and hated myself for it. My mind tried to rewrite the last months. Maybe she was softening. Maybe she missed me. Maybe the lock would stop. At 9:52, the deadbolt clicked again, and I understood the roses were not love. They were camouflage. My emotional trigger has always been being treated as disposable. In school, teachers praised my calm, but forgot my name. At my first job, a supervisor replaced me without a conversation. So when Nadine spoke to me like I was a problem to manage, old shame rose up fast. I blamed my body for snoring. I blamed my work for being demanding. I blamed my temperament for being quiet. I even blamed my childhood church for teaching endurance. All that self-blame made Nadine's lies easier to swallow, because blaming myself let me keep believing she was decent. But decency does not need deadbolts. It does not need rotating stories. It does not giggle at your patience and call you predictable, with church bells faint somewhere beyond the block. In the hotel room, I backed up the audio 3 different ways, then listened with headphones to confirm it was clear. Hearing Nadine speak calmly about taking my home made my hands shake. I wanted to forward the file to her mother, but I did not. I chose quiet protection over spectacle. I sent copies to an account she could not access and labeled the folders by date. Outside my window, traffic hissed on wet pavement. Indifferent. I stared at my reflection in the dark glass and admitted a hard truth. I had loved someone who did not respect me. Mr. Carlyle advised me to keep a log, not for revenge, but for clarity. I wrote dates, times, and facts in a plain notebook. I noted when Nadine called, what she said, and how she shifted blame. I noted my own reactions, too, because I did not trust my memory under stress. In the margins, I caught myself writing things I never said out loud. I miss her voice when it was kind. I hate myself for missing her. I fear people will think I failed as a husband. Putting those thoughts on paper made them less powerful. They stopped buzzing in my head like insects and became lines I could read, acknowledge, and close. With my shoulders stiff, listening for another sound. During mediation, Nadine tried a softer approach. She told the mediator she felt lonely, that I worked too much, that she needed connection. She cried at the right moments, wiping her cheeks carefully so her makeup stayed intact. I watched her and felt a strange numbness. I did not hate her in that room. I simply did not recognize her. When the mediator asked about the locked door, Nadine said it was for safety. Mr. Carlyle played a clip where she laughed about using the lock as evidence. The mediator's face changed just slightly, but enough. Nadine's shoulders tightened. I saw her realize performance had limits. The audio did not care how polished she looked, and the silence felt louder than any argument. Damon never appeared in court, but his voice echoed through the recording, and that was enough. Nadine's attorney argued Damon was just online, as if distance made betrayal harmless. The judge did not seem impressed. The conversation shifted to finances, and the hidden transfers mattered more than Nadine expected. I learned that money leaves trails even when people think it disappears. Statements, timestamps, and account numbers do not bend for feelings. Nadine had tried to move in small amounts, like sneaking sand out of a jar, but the jar still showed loss. When the judge asked Nadine why she did it, she paused too long. That pause sounded like the truth, deciding whether to show itself. As streetlights painted pale lines across the floor. After the settlement, I returned to the house once, escorted by a friend, to collect what was mine. The living room smelled the same, but it felt like someone else's set. The kitchen clock still ticked, steady and indifferent. In the bedroom, the door stood open, unlocked, as if the lock had never mattered. I took my clothes, my grandfather's Bible, and the framed photo from our first anniversary. I did not take the rose vase. Outside, wind pushed dry leaves along the curb in a scraping sound that reminded me of broom bristles. I drove away slowly, not because I hesitated, but because I refused to run from a place I had once tried to protect, with winter coming early and daylight shrinking fast. People assume healing is loud, like a sudden glow-up, but mine has been quiet and sometimes boring. I started running in the mornings, not to look impressive, but to tire my mind. I started cooking again, learning simple meals I avoided because Nadine preferred takeout. I found a small barbershop near my apartment where the owner plays old jazz and talks about weather like it is news. I sit in the chair and let the clippers buzz, letting ordinary conversation stitch me back together. I stopped checking the calendar for what could have been. I stopped pretending that endurance equals love. Some nights I still feel anger, but it no longer drives a car. It sits in the back seat and watches the road, with the sound of jazz drifting from a radio. I have not tried to date. I do not want to use someone else to cover a wound that needs air. I am learning my own speech patterns again, the ones that are not apologies. When I feel tightness in my chest, I name it instead of masking it with chores. When I miss Nadine, I also remember the lock, the practiced smile, the contempt in her laughter, and I let those memories balance the tenderness. I am still Malcolm Hart, still the man who reads fine print, still the man who prefers calm. The difference is I no longer confuse calm with compliance. I keep boundaries now, even when loneliness tries to talk me out of them. My life is not louder, just clearer, and I hold that clarity like something sacred. As I looked up at the gray sky and kept going. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake near the hour the deadbolt used to click, and my body expects betrayal. Then I listen and hear only the buildings settling, a distant car, the soft rush of winter wind. I remind myself that locked doors do not define me. Nadine chose deception. I chose truth, even when truth hurt. I did not gain fame, applause, or a new audience. I simply protected my future, kept my dignity, and rebuilt quietly. When shame tries to return, I answer with routine, prayer, work, and rest. This was my true story. If this story made you angry, it's because it was real, and silence like this happens every day. If you want more true, grounded stories where karma hits in a realistic way, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my place? The end.